Hey guys, Ramsey here. Welcome to another video. Today we've got a family portrait video, and if you've been following my channel, you know that I've been running through many of the houses that I have large bottle collections of. We've talked about Amouage, we've done ranked family portraits on Roja, Creed, Guerlain, Dior, YSL, Chanel, Frederic Malle, and Bortnikov. So, which house has been left out so far that I at least have enough to do a top 10 countdown for you guys? It's actually a house that I've been steadily accumulating. I've been, I've been waffling on whether I wanted to do this video or not because I have more bottles coming, but who knows when they could come. I have a very good friend across the world, on the other side of the world, who's looking for bottles of vintage Serge Lutens for me. So I do have some that are on the way, but they could arrive next month. They could arrive in 6 months, and the time frame really doesn't bother me. I'm very grateful that she's been helping me out. But I wanted to do this video. This is going to be a top 10. Actually, it's going to be a top 13, but we'll call it a top 10 plus countdown. And Serge Lutens is a house that is very influential in the fragrance world. At least for me, when I think about, I would say houses that have had the most impact on other perfumers, the trend of where perfume is going. You know, it's not just people like me, frag heads, that consume Serge Lutens' content and love, the fragrances that he puts out. But also other perfumers are always closely watching the brand for shifts in styles and what's popular. And Serge Lutens always has this cutting edge ability. They always have this cutting edge feel to their fragrances. And what's interesting is, if you look at some of their fragrances, like here's one, for example, look at how dark that juice is, right? And if you like the dark DNA of Serge Lutens, they do dark fragrances beautifully. And if you like one dark fragrance, you'll probably like many of Serge Lutens' offerings. There is a common thread, a DNA that runs through the brand. And I absolutely love the house. I fell in love instantly. They have one of my favorite fragrances from an entire category. I actually already did that category, and it is listed as my favorite Serge Lutens fragrance. I mean, if you have a fragrance from an entire category, we're talking Chypre, Fougère, Ambers, those Orientals, those kind of categories, and your fragrance is number one for me, it has to be number one on the family portrait video. And so this will be a very interesting video because it's a house I want to talk more about. And I noticed yesterday when I did my Christmas special, if you want to call it that, a Christmas special, a Ram Christmas special, that Serge Lutens was the house that reminded me the most of winter and Christmas. And they had 3 bottles on that top 15 list. There were a couple other houses that had 2, but Serge Lutens was actually the only house that had 3 bottles. And so it got me thinking, they're a house that I really feel has been underrepresented on my channel. I need to talk more about the house of Serge Lutens. So let's talk a little bit about the brand first. So there's an interesting facts blurb on Parfumo that I really like because it gave some interesting insight into the brand and the name. So first of all, it starts off with a statement, and a very true statement. What I was trying to say earlier, this actually does a better job of saying it. It just comes out and says, Serge Lutens is one of the very big names in the world of perfume, 100%. If you know perfume, if you love perfume, you probably are a big fan of the house of Serge Lutens. Since 2000, the self-taught perfumer, who describes himself as an author, has been designing very characterful and high-quality perfumes under his brand Parfums But Serge Lutens, and the associated brand Serge Lutens Les Salons de Palais Royal Shiseido. So, by the way, I should mention, this is Serge Lutens and Shiseido combined in one video, because I do have a very important Shiseido fragrance, and I'm very blessed to have it. It's an extremely rare unicorn, and honestly, it could be number one on anyone's list, but yeah, this will be included in the video. So it says, long before that, the multi-talented designer and artist Serge Lutens was a household name in the fashion world. His journey from small circumstances with severely limited real options to absolute creative freedom and artistic realization is impressive. At 14, Serge Lutens, born in Lille in 1942, took up an apprenticeship as a hairdresser. Impressing as he did, with what was then unusual, revolutionary-looking women's hairstyles in a bob style with a shaved-out neck. In 1962, he moved to Paris, and he was hired by Vogue as chief designer in hair, makeup, and jewelry. In 1967, he moved to Dior, and he created a makeup line there. 1967. He worked on beauty from every possible artistic direction as a hairstylist, makeup and fashion designer, photographer, short film design director, image and advertising consultant, and beginning as a perfumer. In 1980, he joined Shiseido to design the entire image of its beauty range. In 1982, he designed his first perfume, Nombre Noir, on behalf of Shiseido, which my buddy across the pond, Rich Mitch, has a mini of, and I can't wait to hear his thoughts on that. I hope he does an entire video on Nombre Noir. I've never had the blessed opportunity to smell it, but I will live vicariously through my fragrance BFF, Rich Mitch. It says the Parisian Salons de Palais Royal, which he designed, are a perfume store in a completely designed house full of luxury, pleasure, and sensory seduction, full of sumptuous furnishings and precious details. I've heard about how beautiful that store is, but of course I've never been. I've never been to Paris. Since the millennium, Serge Lutens has worked exclusively as a perfumer in his own right. The designer and all-around artist who now lives in Marrakesh specializes in what is closest to his heart. His perfumes are perceived as idiosyncratic, often bulky, and not easy, in quotes. Not easy is in quotes, and there's a lot of truth to that. Nevertheless, he has set milestones in perfume fashion with some of his fragrances, and his brand is flourishing profitability. He himself seems to care little about the market success of his fragrances. What is important to him is to follow unrestricted and constantly individual inspiration and to formulate his personal memoirs, experience, and feelings in the language of fragrance. Beautiful. I can 100% associate with that final statement, and it is part of what makes Serge Lutens so important to frag heads in general, to people who really live, breathe, and eat fragrance. I mean, don't eat your fragrances, boys and girls, but I mean, it is a very important brand as far as, you know, standing out, being different, doing your own thing, taking chances, being an individual, you know, standing away from the crowd. And before we get into this top 13 countdown, I do want to do scent of the day because one of my commenters mentioned that they wore this as their Christmas scent. Christmas was yesterday. And I thought, man, that would make a beautiful Christmas scent. So my Christmas scent was Noir Peace by Frederic Malle, the vintage version, the pre-Estee Lauder reformulation, and there are huge differences, I can tell you that. I will do a comparison video one day. I don't know if I'm going to be able to nail all the differences because maybe once I get them side by side, it'll be easier to kind of formulate thoughts, but I was almost, you know, slack-jawed yesterday, jaw dropped to the floor at the differences between the current version, which I have a EDP France Holdings Inc., so an Estee Lauder bottle of a piece Noir Peace, and then I have a vintage that's I have two 10 ml Discovery atomizers in the pre-Estee Lauder, you know, packaging and all that good stuff, and huge difference, huge. So I will do a comparison video, but that was my Christmas scent of the day yesterday. But hearing him say he wore this really made me want to wear this. And then, this is one of the downfalls of having a big collection. I realized that this is only the third time I've worn this fragrance ever, which really kind of stunned me because I feel like I know and love this fragrance like the back of my hand. And I have worn it to bed and stuff like that, but this is only the third full wear I've ever made of this fragrance. And this is the original Polo Green from 1978. And this is a Carlos Benaim masterpiece. It is his best fragrance, in my opinion. It's one of the greatest masculines of all time. It's one of the greatest pine fragrances of all time. And this fragrance actually used to live at, this is a Cosmere version. As you can see right there, it says Cosmere Canada and Montreal. And this particular bottle used to live at Anuja's at Enchanté's. This was very kindly sent to me for free. I bought a couple fragrances off of my good friend Bry, who you all know from the channel, and from, you know, the other channels, Eugene's channel, Rich Mitch's channel, and he sold me 31 Rue Cambon, which I'm absolutely in love with, and I cannot wait to wear that in spring. And he sold me a backup of Le Lion. Thank God I have a backup because I love that stuff. And he said, you know what, Ram, I know you love this stuff. I don't wear it. I'm just going to send you my bottle of Cosmere Polo. And I was like, wow, it's very, very kind of you. So this is getting put to good use, and I'm wearing it today. My God, it's awesome. I mean, I have a Warner version, which came before Cosmere. And so now I have 3 bottles of this, thank God, because I never want to be without this juice. It is probably one of my favorite pine fragrances. It does that thing to my brain where when I smell it, I just think masculine. I just think this is what a man should smell like, you know, because when I was a kid growing up in the 90s, late 80s, mid 90s, you know, I just remember the men that always came over smelling something like this. Again, my father wore Paco Rabanne Pour Homme, so another old school masculine that can compete with this as far as masculinity goes. But I just remember thinking that is what a successful man should smell like. You know, you smelled it with men getting their haircuts. You smelled it at men at the hardware store. You smelled it on men at barbecues. You know, that's what a man should smell like, I thought, as a little kid. Something like this. This always takes me back there. And it just feels like a man that's responsible, takes care of his family. It feels like a man that, you know, before this whole, oh, we have no social boundaries and we can do whatever we want came about, when there were social constructs and men were supposed to take care of their family and that kind of stuff, you know. There were defined roles in society, and those defined roles were very important. And that's the time that this kind of takes me back to. It almost takes me back to, you know, it seems like before the world kind of moved on into something else. And I'm very grateful to have this because I love it. I wear it out in the world. I don't give a shit what people think about it. They could say I could smell like their grandpa all they want. I hope their grandma's not wearing this, although maybe she is. They could say I could smell like their grandpa all they want, and I would just say, well, you just smell like bubblegum, buddy. So, you know, it's just to each their own. To me, this is what a man should smell like. Polo green. Or actually, it's not even called Polo Green. It's technically just called Ralph Lauren Polo. That's what this is called. This is just called Polo from 1978, but people refer to it as Polo Green. And try to get either the Warner or the Cosmere version if you can. Someone said that in the comments, they said that the difference between the current version that's put out by, who owns Polo now? I used to know, and now it's not coming to me who's making Polo fragrances anymore. But whatever the modern version is, they said the vintage is like actually being out in the forest, and the modern is like smelling a byproduct of a forest product, like a newspaper. It does come from trees, but you're not in the forest smelling a newspaper, right? That's the difference, and I love that comparison. So Polo Green, my scent of the day. What a lovely, and that tobacco and leather. Oh man, my God, with that pine and the oak moss overdose, and it's just beautiful. Absolutely stunning. I really want to review some of my favorite fragrances, but I'm terrified because I have no clue how I'm going to formulate the words to put on paper and on video what I'm feeling about something like this. It's going to be very, very challenging. That's why you don't see full reviews of my favorite fragrances, because I am absolutely petrified as to what I'm going to say, how I'm going to do this justice. How am I going to do justice to such an icon? So one day you'll start seeing reviews once I kind of put it all together, but man, that's a scary thought. Okay, so let's do this top 13 Serge Lutens countdown. And remember, first thing, before we get into this, I should mention this. This is just my personal taste, my favorites to wear. Actually, every single one on this list is a banger. There is not a bad Serge Lutens fragrance I've ever smelled. They're all full bottles except for 2 that I'm going to show you. I have 2 decants that are on the list. And one of those decants I want to turn into a full bottle. If I could just find one, I would totally go for it, but I want one of the older bottles. And so keep that in mind. This is just my personal favorites to wear, but I think every single Serge Lutens is amazing. Number 13 could be your number one, and I would not argue with you one bit. So number 13 is a release that came out in 2016. It's a Christopher Sheldrake, who deserves to be given a round of applause. He deserves to be put up there with the best perfumers. I think he deserves to be put up there with, you know, your favorite perfumer. He deserves to be put up there with Dominique Ropion, Pierre Bourdon, you know, the greats, if you will. People don't usually put him in that category, but I feel he deserves it. And this is Baptême du Feu. And Baptême du Feu, again, is a fragrance I really like. It's basically described as a spicy, fruity fragrance with candied orange, clove, cinnamon, and gingerbread. And this is another fragrance that easily could have made a Christmas list because of that gingerbread note. It did not make my, you know, Christmas countdown yesterday, but this could be a Christmas fragrance, you would think, looking at the note listing. The reason that it's at the very end is because whenever I wear this, there is this, what almost the only way I can describe it is what smells like burning metal, okay? So imagine you took, you were at a smelting factory and, you know, you are smelling the metal that's actually being burned from metal into liquid. And, you know, this liquid iron smell is the best way to describe it. It does have this burning metal, you know, it also has this wine-like feel. So even though there's no alcohol note listed, it really does have this plum wine and burning metal. I mean, it smells like Christopher Sheldrake made this in an insane asylum. It smells like they locked him up, put him in a padded room, and said, "You're not getting out until you give us your most insane fragrance." And he went, "Here, Baptême du Feu." And I'm sure there's a lot of fans of this, and I count myself as one. I am a big fan of this fragrance, but on the whole, when you factor everything together, unfortunately, Baptême du Feu has to be, it has to be number 13 for me. Number 12, and this just goes to show the specific list type we were doing yesterday. This was number 1. But now that I'm doing my favorite Serge Lutens to wear, not just the fragrances that I would say are perfect for Christmas, this can't be anywhere but here. And it's because of the sweetness in the fragrance. I really like the composition. It's called Arabie. And Arabie is a spicy oriental fragrance with lots of resins and benzoin and a beautiful date note. There's a lovely date note in here with dried figs and clove and candied mandarin peel. So the clove and the candied orange / candied mandarin peels are two notes that these two share in common, but that's where the similarities end. This is more about spices. There's a cumin note in here that if you don't like cumin, it may put you off. Sometimes it does feel like it kind of comes to the forefront. And the couple times I've kind of worn this to bed, this is a newer bottle to my collection, so I can't say I know this fragrance like the back of my hand, but it does feel like there's lots of resins and myrrh and spices and labdanum. And, you know, if you like the way that Serge Lutens fragrances are very thick and resinous with a lot of depth, I think you'll really like this. The downside is the sweetness. And the reason this made number 1 on my Christmas list yesterday is because it literally smells like you're smelling a piece of Christmas bread. Like, you know, the Christmas bread with the little pieces of candy in there. That's basically what this smells like in a perfume form. And I like tobacco, I like myrrh, I like labdanum, I like cumin, I like the resins, I like lots of pieces of the fragrance, but I'm not 100% sure I love how it comes together. But as a reference, and the fact that I love Serge Lutens and it's in the older presentation, this is a must for me to own. And once we are done with the list, we'll maybe try to talk about some of the ones that are high on my list of Serge Lutens fragrance that I still want to try to collect. But Arabie is, I'm very glad to have it in my collection. Unfortunately, it only comes in at number 12, but maybe as I get to know it, the fragrance will rise. Okay, number 11. And this may surprise some folks because many people consider this one of the greatest musk fragrances of all time. And I, unfortunately, would not make that comment for a couple reasons. Number one, I've had a chance to smell you know, real musk fragrances from houses like Bortnikov with Musk Habib and Arige La Dorée, you know, Siberian musk and stuff like that. Those are my favorite musk fragrances. So, you know, for me, this is a fragrance that I do kind of struggle with. I can totally see why people love it so much, but it's number 11, and it's Musc's Kublai Khan in the vintage Palais Royal Bell Jar, very sought after version. And this is a animalic, spicy musk fragrance. It's dirty. It's challenging. It has that trio. It has like 4 or 5 animalic notes. It has ambergris, supposedly real ambergris. It has castoreum, okay, which is one of my favorite animalic notes, maybe my favorite animalic note. It has beeswax, which can also come off sometimes somewhat animalic in its own right. As Rich Mitch has said before, bees stink. Many people don't know that, but bees do naturally stink. They have a bad smell to them. If you're ever around like a bee hot, you know, farm setup where you've got a bunch of bees in one place, you'll notice that. And there's costus root in here. There is civet. So you've got civet, castoreum, beeswax, ambergris, lots of different animalic notes, and of course that musk, which musk can also come across as animalic. And this has this very furry, you know, resinous, not resinous, sorry. There is vanilla in here, but I wouldn't call this resinous. I would say this has this furry animalic feel, you know, like you're petting the outside of a deer, but there is just something about the composition personally, okay, that puts me off. And it's because I had an ex who actually wore this as her scent, her signature scent, if you will, in the mid 2000s. And so for me, I've got these very strange scent associations with this. And it does have this very animalic, you know, challenging. It's a very challenging fragrance to wear. I'll try to wear it some more and talk some more about it. Usually when I wear this, it's like I'll spray it on before bed and go, oh, why did I do that to myself? But I have to force myself to wear it as a scent of the day. That's really the way I tend to understand fragrances. As I wear them, I live in them. You know, I understand how they break down throughout the entire day. Sometimes just spraying it on an hour or two before bed doesn't give you the full picture, but that's a challenging one for me. Musk's Kublai Khan, that could even fall instead of rise. But we'll see how it goes once I get a chance to know it even more. And number 10 is a new acquisition. It's actually the newest Serge Lutens in my collection. I just got this within the last month or so. I've only worn it to bed. I have not worn it as my scent of the day, but I can already put it ahead of Baptême du Feu, Arabie, and Musc's Kublai Khan. This is 5 o'clock au Gingembre. And what a fragrance this is, man. I am instantly in love with this fragrance. This could even rise higher on the list. The tea note in here is perfect. This is one of the most perfect tea fragrances I've ever smelled because you definitely get the tea, but it has this gourmand aspect around it. There's honey, and there's bergamot, there's patchouli, and if you'll notice, many of Serge Lutens fragrances have patchouli, and sometimes you see patchouli and you just kind of see it as a note, but it isn't really like a main player. Many times when you see patchouli in Serge Lutens fragrances, it's a important note, maybe even like either the main note or a very close secondary note. And the patchouli here really stands out. It gives it this, you know, this depth, this heaviness, this weight. Sometimes patchouli is like adding a weight to a fragrance. And it's peppery and it has this candied ginger vibe. Man, it's woody. It's spicy. It's the tea has this amazing feature. Tea has this facet, this side to it when you smell tea in a composition, it almost like just puts you in this, at least for me, it almost like just puts me in this trance, this very relaxed, hypnotized, just laid back, woosah. You kind of just take it easy. You take a deep breath, you let it out, you just let the weight kind of fall off your shoulders. That's what tea in a fragrance does for me. And if you like fragrances like Gucci Pour Homme 2 or Gucci Pour Homme 2, it gives a similar relaxation vibe, 5 o'clock Eau Gingembre. I can't believe I waited this long to get this in my collection. I am in love with this already. Instantly one of my favorite tea fragrances. I couldn't put it any higher than 10 because there's some big hitters. You're going to start to get into the big hitters very fast. But I'll tell you what, this could easily rise on my list as I get to know the fragrance even more. But what a buy this was for me. This is an amazing tea-based scent, and the name is perfect. The name is literally 5 o'clock Eau Gingembre refers to the 5 o'clock tea time tradition that the British have. 5 o'clock tea is their time, and the name is perfect. The scent is perfect. It's another Christopher Sheldrake masterpiece. Christopher Sheldrake deserves, he really, to me, deserves to be held on a higher pedestal. I think some of the work that he's done sometimes just doesn't get the love that it deserves. And I'm here to say it deserves to be he deserves to be recognized for his creations. They are amazing. Okay, next on the list is a sandalwood fragrance that came out a decade ago, and instantly, this is one of my favorite sandalwoods from the designer realm. I mean, Serge Lutens is a niche house, but I'm not talking about, the kind of sandalwood that you would smell in an Arige La Dorée. Like, for example, if you've ever smelled Santal Galore, if you've ever smelled Santal Galore by Arige La Dorée, that's probably my favorite sandalwood fragrance of all time. I don't own a bottle, but I do have an early impression. Someone was very kind to send me enough juice where I could wear it and talk about it. If I could pick one sandalwood fragrance, it would be Santal Galore by Arige La Dorée. But, you can't compare a Creed or a Serge Lutens or, something that's not using the kind of real distilled sandalwood that those indie houses are using. It's a little different comparison. So as far as you're comparing, the niche houses like Serge Lutens to each other, this is one of my favorite sandalwoods. It's Santal Majuscule. And Santal Majuscule comes in at number 9. And Santal Majuscule is, if you look at the note listing, a very simple fragrance. It only lists sandalwood, cacao, and Turkish rose, okay? And the thing about it is, as soon as I smell, there's a Dior, which I have a sample of. Let's see if I can find it. Yes, here we go. There's a Dior called Santal Noir. And Santal Noir instantly made me think of the fact that that Francois Demachy copied Serge Lutens, because Santal Noir is a very similar setup to me. It feels like it has a similar construction. It's sandalwood with Turkish rose and ambrette. And they use the ambrette that Dior does use beautiful ambrette, to be fair, because of Dior Homme. They have that lovely iris ambrette combination, which, they're like this. And the ambrette Dior uses is beautiful. I think it's one of the best ingredients that Francois Demachy worked with at his time at Dior. The other being myrrh. He used myrrh in a beautiful fashion between Fahrenheit Absolute and Eau Sauvage Parfum. The myrrh from the 2012 version. The 2017 version took the myrrh out and replaced it with something else. Elemi, I believe. But if you've smelled Santal Noir, you will instantly get the fact that I think the frame of reference, I think the inspiration for Santal Noir was Santal Majuscule. And this is my favorite of the two. There's a reason I only have a little mini of Santal Noir and not a full bottle, because I don't think it's worth a full bottle. But getting back to Santal Majuscule, it looks like it's a simple fragrance, but it's not. You know, the sandalwood is beautiful. It has depth. The rose is perfect. The cacao adds this gourmand facet, but it's almost like when you smell this, you'll know what I'm talking about. It's almost like the least gourmand you could ever have, because it does have that sandalwood and cacao, but it's completely not sweet, and it doesn't feel like the overly sweet synthetic chocolate that you would expect to get from a sandalwood cacao rose combination. It's completely different than that. And when you realize it's completely different than that, you start to peel back the layers. And one of the most beautiful things about Christopher Shell, I don't know if this is a Christopher Sheldrake or not, I'm guessing it is, but one of the most beautiful things about Serge Lutens and his creations is that they have layers. There's different, you know, there's a depth that you can go down to. And what's beautiful about this fragrance is that you can just spray it on nonchalantly, laying around the house, and enjoy it. And you can also get into kind of nerdy perfume mode and try to break everything down. At 48 minutes, it starts to smell like this, and you can have just a blast. You know, it fills both roles. It's not just, you know, it's not so over the top that it can't be worn, but it's not so in depth that, you know, you don't feel like you can wear it out either. It's it walks that line. It walks it beautifully. So Santal Majuscule, beautiful fragrance. All right, next we are going to go to the only fragrance that I have that I do not want a full bottle. I mean, I do want a full bottle, but I'm refusing to buy one. It came out in 2019, and it's only in the new bottles. And the thing about it is Serge Lutens changed their bottles to having this, instead of this little setup where you've got the little sticker here, which I think this is just perfect. I think this is a perfect design. I mean, it fits perfectly in the hand. The bottles look so beautiful lined up, you know, like little soldiers in a row. The aesthetics of the brand fit the brand of Serge Lutens perfectly. The fact that you can make it a splash or it comes with a sprayer, I love everything about it. The new bottles have this black label that go all the way up and down, and some people say it was done when you're staring at it at a department store or something, that it's supposed to pop a little bit more. I don't care. I hate it. And I used it as like a line in the sand, just like the new Creeds. I will not buy Creeds past 2017. I will not buy Serge Lutens in the new bottles, period. As much as I love this scent, and as much as I would love a bottle, I won't do it just because I'm boycotting that. Just a little personal quirk. This is La Couche du Diable. And this is another one. This is the best modern Serge Lutens release. So all of the new stuff they've been putting out, I really feel has been kind of crap. I feel like Serge Lutens went away from what made them Serge Lutens. And, you know, since we're on the topic, we'll talk about it. Their distribution network is absolutely atrocious. The fact that they pulled out of distributing in the United States at all, I think is a travesty. Like, you know, for me, I can't just go buy Serge Lutens. I have to buy it either secondhand, where it's really marked up, or something like that. I have to get it from a European seller. Insane that a brand of Serge Lutens' credibility and status and symbol would do something like that. That is just insane. And I really feel like they just need to bite the bullet, get rid of that ridiculous sticker that they put on the front of the bottle, and go back to these. Just admit it was a mistake, okay? That's it. That's what you have to do. You just have to admit, hey, I made a mistake. It was a bad move changing the label, and go back to, you know, what you had before. That's my advice to the House of Serge Lutens, and get back in the United States. I don't know what the problem is with the distribution, but you should not leave out an entire country like the United States. Maybe it's not as big of a percentage of your revenue, but it's still important visually in the way people think about your brand. But going back to La Couche du Diable, this is smoky and resinous. It's basically oud with labdanum. That's it. Cistus labdanum with oud. And one of my favorite labdanum scents. I think the best modern Serge Lutens release. Do they use real oud? I don't know, honestly, but it's so good, I don't care. I love labdanum. Labdanum, to me, is one of my favorite ingredients. I totally see why Roja uses large amounts of labdanum in his compositions, because labdanum is one of those fragrances that, one of those ingredients, those notes, that it does so many things at once. You know, it can be resinous and sticky and tarry. It can be smoky. Sometimes labdanum smells like it's on fire. It can be leathery. Sometimes labdanum gives off this leathery vibe. So there's so much that labdanum does in, you know, in one small little ingredient that many people overlook. And here, it just intertwines with the oud so beautifully. It's a beast mode fragrance. It lasts forever. I just wore this to bed a week ago, and it was absolutely stunning. I don't know if I have a review of this on the channel. Look at the color of the juice. Love it. I love dark juice like that. It's stunning. And I don't care if it's food coloring or not. I love the dark juice. Smoky and leathery and resinous with that oud. It's just beautiful. Perfect for winter. But that's why I have a decant. I refuse to buy a bottle. So La Couche du Diable comes in at number 8. Number 7 is probably one of the best cinnamon fragrances I've ever smelled, ever. And this made my Christmas list yesterday. It was one of the fragrances that made my Christmas list. It's called Rousse. And this is, again, a Christopher Sheldrake. Totally underrated. This came out in 2007. I think it's still available for purchase, but I don't think I've ever seen a new bottle of Rousse. Maybe they only stuck it in the bell jar or something. I don't know what they did with this. But it's amber with mandarin orange, nutmeg, cedarwood, and cinnamon. And it smells like you're smelling one of the most luxurious red hots. Like, imagine you took a red hot, put it in a mink coat, and made it walk down the catwalk. I mean, it is beautiful. It's a stunning cinnamon. It's so cozy and enveloping and warm. It's spicy. It does, the nutmeg gives this spiciness to it, and the cedar wood adds this woodiness to it, and yet the focus, the heart and soul of this fragrance is the cinnamon. One of the best cinnamon fragrances ever. It feels like comfort. It feels like you're inside by a warm fire with a cinnamon shoal, and, you know, outside there may be a blizzard, but you are just completely content and comfortable and relaxed in your home in front of the fire with family. It's stunning. Rousse by Serge Lutens. So glad to have this. And again, I plan on doing reviews on all these. I'm petrified because I want to do them justice, and it's going to be very hard to do justice to some of these masterpieces, but Rousse comes in at number 7. Number 6 is a fragrance that, if you ask another perfumer, hey, you can make one fragrance, which fragrance would you have made from the past if you could have? And I bet you 1 out of every 4 perfumers would pick this. This is Féminité du Bois by the house of Serge Lutens. And this is a collaboration between, well, basically it's a trio of perfumers, because this actually has Serge Lutens listed as one of the perfumers. Usually they just say Christopher Sheldrake or whoever it is. This lists Christopher Sheldrake, Serge Lutens, and Pierre Bourdon as a trio of perfumers. And whenever they created this, originally it was created for Shiseido, and it came out in 1992, I believe. And Rich Mitch has that original Shiseido bottle. I have only smelled this version, which he says is a little bit thinner. It's a little bit lighter. Look at the pale color of the juice, right? Imagine that there's this, you know, watery, thinner version, if you will. That's the way that it was described to me, that the original Shiseido version is much thicker and a little bit richer, fuller, full-bodied. But this is clove with honey and beeswax, cardamom, musk, orange blossom, peach, plum, rose, vanilla, violet, ylang ylang, cedar, and cinnamon. And it literally translates to the femininity of wood, I believe. And you know, when they wanted to put this out originally in 1992, I heard Pierre Bourdon tell the story. I think it was Pierre Bourdon telling the story, where he basically said, "Hey, we approached some oil houses or whatever it was, and when they were doing their initial meetings, and they were saying, hey, we want to make this fragrance, we want to make this woody fragrance." And they were saying, okay, so you want to make a masculine fragrance? And he was saying, no, we want to make a fragrance for women. And they were going, what are you talking about? You don't make woody fragrances for women. No one does that, right? And so that was kind of like this breakthrough moment in 1992. It tore down a barrier because there was this wall there. You do not make woody fragrances for women. You put flowers and other things in women's fragrances, but you don't put woods. And this was like almost a little bit of a first, which seems silly now because now that some of the gender roles in perfumery has kind of been torn down. But this is basically this woody, spicy, honeyed plum with the cedar note really beautifully highlighted here. It's a beautiful woody fragrance. Again, just like I mentioned, this is one of my favorite sandalwoods. This has to be listed as one of the best cedars. Féminité du Bois, beautiful on a woman, beautiful on a man. This version, they basically repackaged in 2009 for Serge Lutens. But originally it was issued for Shiseido for women. Now they market it as unisex, but as we know, anyone can wear anything. And then this is the Shiseido fragrance coming in at number 5. This is a very rare fragrance. I don't think I've done a full video on this yet. I think maybe I talked about it when I wore it as my scent of the day sometime this year. And I posted a picture of the bottle on Instagram because it's very rare, beautiful, stunning fragrance that I wish more people could get to experience. It's a true unicorn. You know, we talk about vintage discontinued fragrances and we talk about unicorns, and they're, you know, not every discontinued fragrance is going to become a unicorn. I mean, think about how many bottles of Lagerfeld cologne they made. If it is truly discontinued, imagine how many bottles are floating out there. This is one of those where they made it for a small amount of time. They changed the name. They made it for a small amount of time under the other name, and then they just discontinued it. It came out in 1993, and it was originally called Basara by the house of Shiseido. They then changed it to Basala, and someone explained this to me once before, and I forgot the full story behind it. But if anyone knows why they did the name change, do let me know. But Basara or Basala, either one, I think they're both basically the same, is a spicy, leathery fragrance. And this has a lovely lavender. Oh, the lavender in the top. It's basically this dry, spicy lavender with tobacco, sandalwood, and leather is the gist of the fragrance. There's other things in there. There's some sort of flowers. It smells like some sort of amber in the dry down. You know, there's a little bit of citruses to guide you into the opening, but man, once you get to that spicy, leathery bit, it's beautiful, stunning masculine fragrance that I wish more people got to try. You know, the lavender tobacco combination is so masculine, and yet there's something about, you know, the woodiness, the citruses that just make it feel like maybe you could wear this in more situations than just the cold. But I'm a huge fan. Very lucky to even have the little bit of juice that I have here. This is what is this? A 50 ml bottle. So what is this? 20 mils? You'd say that's about 20 mils left. I'll cherish each drop. I will hopefully do a full review before this bottle is gone. But Basala. Now we've got 3 tobacco fragrances in a row. This is the first of the 3. This could easily be the last of the 3. I really struggled with where to put the tobaccos. I ended up doing it the way I did it just because of, you know, my fingers crossed. I hope I can find a full bottle of the next one that's on the list. And then I have so much memories and history with the fragrance that's coming up in a couple spots here. But yeah, we have 3 very heavy tobacco fragrances in a row here. So Basala or Basara comes in at number 5. Number 4 is a fragrance called Fumerie Turque. And if you said, Ramsey, you could pick one Serge Lutens fragrance right now, which one would you want that you can get a vintage full bottle of? I would say Fumerie Turque is at the top of my list right now. It's probably, and I have a video on this. You can go check out my channel. I have a full early impression, as much of a video as you can put on, you know, a couple mils here. But this is thanks to Rich Mitch, who sent me this from across the pond. And so I got to experience Fumerie Turque. I think this came from a Ciel de Grace. What do they call those bottles? But not the vintage bottles, the one that are tall and dark. Ciel de Grace is what's coming to mind, but I don't think that's the right name. But Fumerie Turque is basically this smoky oriental. It's got beeswax, resins, jasmine, candied rose, leather, patchouli, Peru balsam, styrax, tobacco, tonka bean, juniper, and white honey. And this is probably the more challenging of the tobacco fragrance that we're talking about. There's so many layers to this, though. Many people talk about the tobacco and honey, and obviously those are the two, you know, most important factors. But like I talked about earlier in the video, when you see patchouli in a Serge Lutens fragrance, you have to give it some credence. You have to, you know, focus on that patchouli. The patchouli is a very important part of Fumerie Turque. It is kind of the backbone of the scent, with that beautiful candied rose. It's just stunning. The honey, you guys know I love honey. Honey is one of my favorite notes, and this is probably the number one honeyed tobacco that I feel is missing from my collection. One day I will find a vintage bottle, but Fumerie Turque, you can go check out my early impressions thoughts, comes in at number 4 for me. Number 3, you guys probably know, if you know Serge Lutens, you know the tobacco fragrance that got left out or hasn't been talked about yet. And number 3 is Chergui. And honestly, if I was being 100% unemotional and just robotic, I probably would have put Fumerie Turque at number 3 and Chergui at number 4. But because of my relationship with this, I have or had 10 ml decant that I went through before this bottle. So even though you don't see much of a dent, I have worn this fragrance a lot. I've been through basically an entire 10 ml decant. And Chergui is just beautiful. You know, Chergui, if you are familiar with it, is also a, it's also a honeyed tobacco in a sense. Let me just look up the notes, because I remember there was a note of hay in Chergui. And it really does give this, leaves are turning, fall. You know, you get this, you're on a hayride like vibe with Chergui. I guess I should have had the notes pulled up beforehand. Let's see here. Chergui. Let me see if I can remind myself of the notes real quick here. It's just so comforting. You know, it does feel like there's a little bit of fuzziness to the fragrance because of the beautiful iris. There's a lovely iris and incense note in here with the tobacco, amber, sandalwood. And I really feel like the iris is the wild card in here that just would not pop into my mind until I saw it right now. That iris note in here just makes everything feel so elegant, even though it's a tobacco, even it's a tobacco honey with hay. That iris note is like the wild card to me because it just makes it so posh, completely wearable by anyone. But I just love this. It's one of my comfort scents. It's one of my cool weather, leaves are turning comfort scents. I love Chergui. It's a huge love for me. But if I have to be honest, probably once I get a bottle of Fumerie Turque and I get to wear it more and know it more, I would think that those would switch. And maybe even Basala would jump ahead of Chergui. But as it stands right now, I have to have Chergui at number 3 because I wore it. I lived in it. It's one of the fragrances that made me fall in love with the brand of Serge Lutens. And then the final 2, can you guys guess which 2? I think if you know my taste, you might know what's number 1. But this was very tough because I almost put this as number 1, and it was very, very close. I think I even put it at number 1 and then changed it back. And but number 2 ended up being Fille Aiguilles. And Fille Aiguilles is one of the most beautiful pine. You know, these two, I mentioned my scent of the day today, Polo Green. These two are two of the most beautiful pine fragrances you'll ever smell. Fille Aiguilles says stone pine needle and vetiver and frankincense, incense with bay leaf, spices, and fruits. And the fruits feel like there's some fresh fruits, some dried fruits. And the way that I describe Fille Aiguilles, and it's just something that has always popped into my head, is imagine you have like this, you ever touch like a pine tree or a pine cone and got some of that sticky resins on your hand? You know, you touch it and it kind of sticks to your hand. So imagine you get this resinous stickiness from touching the pine tree, and there's a fire in the background. And you can kind of smell the smoke from the fire, but it's a little far off. And you get the pine, you get the earthy rootiness. The vetiver adds to the earthy, rooty, dry, dusty feeling of the ground. And you look up and you can see the blue sky. And you notice how open it is, how it just seems like, you know, the sky is just completely blue, and you smell this cold, fresh air when you take a deep breath from the forest, this fresh air. And somehow the brilliant part of Fille Aiguilles, yes, there's pine, yes, there's smoke, yes, there's sticky oiliness, there's spices, there's the fruits, but the most amazing part is how Christopher Sheldrake managed to capture this outdoor, this you know, portrait-like mode of being outdoors and fresh outdoor air in the fragrance. It's all there. I mean, it's all there in this bottle. One of his masterpieces, and again, deserves to be talked about with the greats. Fille Aiguilles, if you can find one of these older bottles, go for it. I've seen this fragrance going for crazy money. And a little balsamic, but that dark green, woody, piney smell is just, it's up there. It's up there with my favorite pine fragrances. So, 2 classics today being mentioned when it comes to pine. And that leaves only one. And if you know my Serge Lutens collection, you know which one is coming up next. I have a backup bottle of this. It's the only Serge Lutens I've backed up. And it's Ambre Sultan. Excuse me. So Ambre Sultan is basically this oriental spicy fragrance is how I would describe it. The amber is a classic amber. It's amber with cistus labdanum. Again, he uses labdanum so beautifully. La Couche du Diable is a fantastic representation of that. There is a little bit of vanilla here, but what makes the fragrance for me, if you ever smelled like, you know, Trussardi's Uomo from 1983, how it has that spicy opening, like you've opened up your grandma's spice cabinet, and the spices have been in there for 50 years because your grandma bought the house with her husband, you know, when they were in their 20s, and now, you know, she's in her 70s or 80s. She's lived there forever. And, you know, that spice cabinet has been her spice cabinet forever, right? And all of the years and decades of spices that have been in her spice cupboard have just almost like penetrated the wood, right? That's in her cabinet. And you open it up and you get hit with this smell that is almost unimaginable. You can't recreate it. That's Ambre Sultan to me. It's the smell of Grandma's Spice Kitchen with one of the most perfect amber notes I've ever smelled. I really don't know if you can improve on this. This is just amber perfected. It's amber done right. There's very few ambers that I smell where I think, you know, this is it. This is my amber. As soon as I smelled Ambre Sultan, I knew that this was just a reference amber. That's the way I would describe it. It's a reference amber. It's the only Serge Lutens I've backed up, if that makes sense. I would love to back up Fille Aiguilles, and I'd love to get a bottle of Fumerie Turque And I do have a bottle of Vetiver Oriental on the way, thank God, in the vintage format, in the Palais Royal format. There's many Serge Lutens that are on the list. For example, there's one called La Mer. La Mer, I want a vintage bottle of, but I just cannot find it. Borneo 1834, I want a vintage bottle of, but it's very hard to find. And I do have a bottle of Coromandel, so I'm like, do I really need it? There's a fragrance called Queer Moresque. Actually, Queer Moresque may even be higher on the list than Fumerie Turque. Queer Moresque is probably number 1 on the list. Fumerie Turque number 2. And so there are some very big hitter Serge Lutens that I do not have in my collection just because I refuse to buy the new ones and I won't pay an arm and a leg for the old ones. Even a partial bottle like I found with Rousse would sort me, you know, something where I can wear it and enjoy it. But yes, that's my Serge Lutens video. Very influential house. Let me know what your favorites are. Let me know if you agree with my listing. Let me know how you would rank your favorites. I love seeing your faces in the comments. I learn more from you than you do from me. I say it over and over and over again, but it's very true. I've learned so much from my subscribers. I have the best first 2,500 subs of anyone ever. I really do feel like I've been blessed with some of the most knowledgeable, amazing subscribers to my channel. Thank you for watching and being here and supporting and everything you do. It really does make it feel like a community, like a little family, like we're in our own little fragrance town, and you guys make me feel like I'm the mayor. It's absolutely an unbelievable feeling. I love this time that we have together. I love talking about fragrances with you guys. So cheers. Thanks everyone for watching. Hope to see you in the comments. Bye guys. See you next time.